Here it's a Sikha of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he gave very early in his leadership. It's a Sikha that is found in Likuti Sichot Daled. Likuti Sichot Daled. It's also found, I think it's also found, the translation is also found in English. So if you want to go over it, this the Rebbe said in 1956. 1956. It's talking about a sentence very early in our Torah portion that Moses is telling the Jews, remember how God took you through the desert that was great and awesome, filled with snakes and serpents, and a place that was no water. Snakes and serpents and scorpions. And there was no water there. You were thirsty and there was no water. So, and the Rebbe says, this is not just telling a story. Moses is not just being poetical here. He's saying something very relevant to us today. All these details about the desert, which was big and awesome, and a place that's filled with snakes and serpents and scorpions, and you were thirsty with no water. These are all very relevant to us today. So we're going to see how. In Haitek Hasedra, in this week's Torah portion, Parshas Eikiv, is Aina from the Shivin and the Chemta. This is one of the seven, the Haftorah that we say is one of the seven of comfort. It's one of the 7 weeks between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah, where God comforts us. Especially the prophet Isaiah, 7 prophecies from Isaiah comforting the Jewish people, that even though it might seem that God has left us, but in fact, he is not. And he still is with us. But on the other hand, he still is demanding from us that we act normal. We act like Jews. So we'll see what this means. This is one of the 7 weeks of comfort. Vos nit nor as the Haftorahs, not only are the Haftorah, the portion of the prophets that we read after the Torah, Zayin and Inyan from Nechama, nor Oich, the Sidra, also the whole entire, not just the Haftorah, the prophetic part that we read after the Torah, but also the whole entire Torah portion is also talking about, somehow or other, is referring to how God is comforting us. Barum, because the Haftorah, Zayin and Dach, and Barubam, and a Parsha, because the Haftorah is usually 90% of the Haftorahs more are of the same topic as the Torah portion. Is Vibalt, as the Haftorahs read Vegan, their Nechama from their Geula, because the Haftorah talks about the future redemption, is Darf Mezogim. We have to say, as Oich the Sidra, that also the Torah portion is talking about the redemption. Be'emes, read it Gans Torah, Vegan Gula. The fact is, the whole entire Torah is talking about redemption. Varum, because in Ein Lecha Ben Tchorin Elamisha Osef B'Torah, because the only person who's really free is one who learns the Torah. The Torah is the blueprints for the world. It's the instruction book for creation, for life. So if a person doesn't know what the instructions are, what the directions are, what the whole plan of the whole thing is, so he wanders around. He can wander around the same block his whole life and think that he's making progress. He thinks he's traveling from one place to another, and really he's just going around in circles. Durchan, or going backwards. Durchan, as a Torah, by means of a person learning Torah, is by free, that he's freed, the soul is freed from the exile of the body and the animal soul. Und durch dem, by means of this, wird by freeing euch dem Guf from Golos Kapashuta. Then the whole body will be free from exile. What's the Rebbe talking about here? There's so many people that think that they're free. You know, people take a drug or something and they think, wow, I'm free. Or they get into some sort of a religion. They think, wow, I'm born again, I'm free. Right? The people do all sorts of weird, crazy sins and get addicted to all sorts of things. And they think that that's it, that they found themselves, this is their true self. But says the Rebbe that, okay, it could be that the person succeeds in confusing himself his whole life. So he doesn't, he substitutes one confusion for 1,000 confusions. But the fact of the matter is that that's not what really freedom is. That's not what really life is. Oh. Life is doing something eternal, serving the creator of the universe. And that you can only do through the Torah. Nor in ganzen Torah redet sich wegen anderen Inyanim. Even though that in the Torah is talking about other things, und durch sie is voran the Geula, and through them is the future redemption. Although in the Sidra, in this Sidra, is from Shiva the Nechemta redet sich wegen Geula allein. So usually the whole entire Torah, what's the Torah? The Torah is written by God. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but the fact is that's what it was. And when God gave the Torah Mount Sinai, he revealed the whole thing, including the stories about Bereshit and how, and Abraham and etc. and Bilam, and all these things. Every word of the Torah is the word of God. Right? This is very, very difficult to believe and understand. But on the other hand, it's also more difficult to believe that every human being and every single, eyeball and everything, every little bug is also the work of God. And it's work of God constantly. God is constantly creating it. So that's also, who would believe a thing like that? What does God want all the blades of grass in Brazil or something? What does God care about all these blades of grass for? But he creates them all. He creates them all. And the Torah is the internal, it's the inside of the whole thing. It's the connecting with the creator. So that's the whole idea of the Torah. A person who learns the Torah, involves himself in the Torah, takes the Torah very seriously, and also, of course, learns all the aspects of the Torah. You have to learn also the soul of the Torah. As that person is freed, that he's freed. It's true that he's surrounded by confusion, and the world is in confusion, and the redemption is not, total redemption has not come. That's for sure. But the fact is, learning Torah is a step toward that, and it makes a little bit, something like the Holy Temple was holy, even though the whole rest of the world wasn't holy. So the person learns Torah, even though the Torah talks about all sorts of other mundane things, as not most of the time the subject matter is not at all about any redemption or Moshiach. But nevertheless, says the Rebbe, the fact is that the whole Torah is talking about that. The whole Torah frees you. That's most of the Torah. But this Torah portion talks clearly about the future redemption. Men gefindt sich doch itzter in Galus. It's true, we are now found in exile. Is they're clear in order to bring about and announce this whole thing of redemption, that the Jewish people redeemed will realize that the Jews are holy and the land of Israel is holy and the Torah is holy and the commandments are holy and there'll be a holy temple and that God is creating the whole entire world. That's called Geula. In order to this to happen is get man freer to verstehen. We can understand what exactly is the problem. Why don't we feel it everywhere? The Torah is explaining also what is the disease before you can get to the cure. What's the reason for the exile? When you know the reason for the exile, that we're in this exile, why is there all this confusion? Why is the creator not revealed in his creation? Why is there so much the suffering in the world, etc.? As vase man, we have to know first wie zu metaken sein the siba. You have to know how to fix up the cause. Is b'shas men metaken the siba, when you fix up the cause of the exile, wird b'meile nitaken oich the mesover. Then you can fix up the result. Fix up the cause of the disease, and the disease will go away. In this case, the disease is what's called the exile, the confusion in the world. How do you fix it up? You have to find what the source of it is. When a zoe kommt men, so they're geula. That's the way you come to this future redemption. Al derech mashal, for instance, a person that's sick, when he's physically sick, is b'shas erves, when he knows what disease he's got, what it is vet ergein, so a rofe, then he can go to the doctor. But erves as Varum, erweist as is a chola, but he knows that, at least that he knows that he's sick. Ervet weisen was zu tun. When he knows that he's sick, then he can know what to say to the doctor. Varum, erweist, and was besteht, their Krankheit, he knows what the disease, where the disease is. Ubamela, therefore, vetarov, and then the doctor can know what type of medicine and treatment to give to him to heal him. The idea was erveis, as there is a whole of the fact that a sick person knows that he's sick, und in was sein Krankheit besteht, and what exactly his disease is, the idea alone, this knowledge alone, is showing a halber ruf before. This is already as a half cure. Und sie wird bringen mit der Zeit, and it'll bring in the course of time, euch the andere halber refuah, the other half of the healing. So knowing the disease is half of the healing, and then the doctor can do the other half. As wird wesen ansagen and ganzen gesund, then it'll be totally healed. Mit dem you deal with the knowledge, was man declared them in agolas, that with the fact that we are making clear exactly that we are sick, we are in exile. Und was is the sieben? What's the reason? Häupt sich shine on the gula. Then you can begin the redemption. Was wesentlich was der galus is. As soon as you know what exile, what it means, es sucht man wie es zu heilen. Then you can know how to heal it. Und a rupke, a roiske, and therefore go out to the Holy Land. Someone just wrote me a letter. Letter. What are you talking about going to? We're already in. The Jews are already living in Israel. So of course the answer to that is it's exactly this. They're living there and they don't think that there's any exile. They don't think that there's any exile. The Rebbe once gave an example, and I think it could even be here that he gave the example. He said that two people went into a doctor. Both of them had a big boil on their leg, the same exact disease. The first person went in and they heard scream. The second guy that's sitting out in the waiting room, he heard screams and shouting. And after like a half an hour, the first person came out and he was just had to sit down. He almost fainted and he was all bandaged up. And he was just sitting there. And the doctor said, okay, next patient, please. And he went in, he has the exact same thing. 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, he came out smiling, gave the doctor the money. The first person was sitting there is almost dead. He said, I don't understand it. The doctor did to me. He said, what did you do that didn't hurt? He said, I showed the doctor my other leg. I didn't show him my sick leg. I showed him what I heard. I saw what he did to you. And I didn't want it to happen to me. So I showed him my healthy leg. It's the same thing, a person that's sick and he tries to make believe that he's not sick, right? That now the redemption has already come and it's the land of Israel. So it's the opposite. The fact is that we're very, very far. Now, in fact, this that we're in land of Israel could be the lowest point. The land of Israel used to be holy. And now we have the system that's here now makes it not holy, filled it up with all sorts of missionaries and idolatry and all sorts of crazy things. We've talked about this a lot of times. And so that's the disease. To deny the disease, denying the disease doesn't make you healthy. Exactly the opposite. Realizing what the disease is, that's half of the healing. And B'shas the Yidden sein in Rein kommen, the Eretz Tova Rachava, when the Jews came into the land of Israel the first time, sein they free or beforehand, they had to go through a big desert. And then sein is there raised from the Midbar, when they were going out from the desert, then they came into the land of Israel. Maisa Avosim and Labanim, what happened to the forefathers? This is a sign for us. Das was the Torah Dartzel, that which the Torah tells us. Wegen dem Midbar, that there was a desert, in welche die Yidden haben sich gefunden, where the Jews were, again, before they came into the land of Israel, is das Simon Labanim. This is a sign to us. As euch der Galus, that also this exile in welchem in gefunden sich, that we are found in now, is gleich zum Midbar, just like the desert. In welche die Yidden haben sich gefunden, just like the desert, the Jews were found in there. And the idea and the knowledge was revel and wesen that we should know, wegen dem Midbar, in welche Yidden haben sich gefunden damals, as was das is euch a yediyah wegen dem Galus, in when we know more about what happened in the desert, which the desert we're saying is just a metaphor for our exile that we're in now, is welchen min gefinnen sich hein, that we are in now, is durch them, by means of this, then we can know exactly what, that's the disease, what to heal, what we should tell, what we have to fix up. In this case, we have to be the doctor ourselves. In Hein to consider in this week's Torah portion, Alts Eina from the Shiva, the Nechamta, which is one of the 7 weeks of comfort, Haftorahs of comfort, and the portion, the Torah readings of comfort, der Zeltman, Vegan, the Midbar, talked about the desert. The Pasuk B'Tzeichen, the Midbar, Midbar, Gadol Anora, Nachash Saraf Akrov, Simon Asher in mind. God says, remember, I took you through the desert, and it says, the desert that was big, awesome, snakes, serpents, scorpions, and a thirst that there was no water. God said, I provided you the water. I protected you from the snakes. I protected. Okay, the Jews knew that they went through a desert that had all these. They knew all these things, right? That God, why did he have to mention it again? Says the Rebbe, he's talking to us. Das seinen als verstandlich, verschiedenen and Martin, all these different details in the desert, that there were in the desert, und euch wegen heintige Galus, also regarding our exile, wie früher gesagt, like we said before, seine de pratia yadia, when we know about these details, wegen der Galus, about the exile, a minion from Nechama. This is already half, when we know what the disease is, that's already half of the cure. This already comforts us a bit. Because during the idea, because by means of knowing what the problems are, what is today, what are the snakes and the scorpions, and what does it mean? By means of that, we know that we know what to heal. As a room gains to Galus, that we can we can go out from exile to Eretz Tov Rachava. We can go into the wide land, the land of Israel. Not just to stress, the point is why all the Jews are going to come to the land of Israel is because everyone will feel God. The whole world will feel God. The whole world will feel that God is not as far away, is not, limited to being as far away as all the other religions and philosophies or whatever say. God is not, that God is creating us. He's infinitely close to us, but on the other hand, he's infinitely further away at simultaneously that any possible knowledge, any religions could possibly use, creates all the spiritual, creates all the other religions. But on the other hand, God is infinitely close to us. That revealing that God is creating everything and that God loves us. He's infinitely high, and nevertheless, he's creating each and every one of us, Jew and Gentile. As that gives us a feeling that we're, in a way, we're free from our own egotism. We can accept new responsibility. Midbar, okay, so now but let's understand what is the problem. Midbar desert is a place, is nitkain Moshe Adam, where no person lives. Right? When the Jews walked through the desert, they didn't disturb anybody. But when they were in the desert, people heard they were coming, they were there, but they didn't disturb the desert. There's nobody has property there because nobody wants to live there. Is nit git nine kind yeshuv from mention. Humanity cannot live in a desert. Zog deroi from Midbar, it says about the desert, Midbar Agadol, that it's a big desert. A groisa Midbar. Their makom on Midbar, the place from the desert, was nit kind menschliche yeshuv. It's not a human place where you can dwell, is greater from them or from Yeshuv b'nei Adam. It's greater, the place, their makom on Midbar was nit kind mention. Yeshuv is greater from them or from Yeshuv b'nei Adam. It's greater from places where people live. The uninhabitable areas of the world are greater than the inhabitable areas of the world. Adam gate oif Yidden. When it talks about no man can live there, when it says in the Torah, no man can live there, desert is a place where no man can live. In that case, it's written, Adam is referring to the Jewish people. Atem Kurim Adam. Vida Shalah, like the Shalah, the book Shnei Luchos Abris, he explains Adam comes from Adamele Elyon, being similar to God. Yidden Zainen gleichen zu dem Adam Elyon, Alakise, the Jews are similar to the upper man on the throne. Like we say before, it says in the Torah that man was made in the image of God. That's talking about Adam. As soon as Adam sinned, he lost that image. Like we spoke about this many times. That's why it says when Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, that the lions did not eat him, because he had the image of man, and animals are afraid of the image of man. We see they eat everybody else up. They don't have the image. They don't have the image of man. Image of man means that you do what God wants, and only the Jews can really do what God wants because God gave them the Torah. That's really what God wants. It says the desert is a place where no man lives there. What does it mean? Where Jews don't connect to God. They don't have any Torah and no commandments. Let's see how this comes about. That's called exile. Midbar, a gadol, when it says it's a big desert, their ort versus nitkain, Moshe ben Adam is gresser with their ort from Yeshav Adam. Means that the place where people cannot live is greater than the place where a person can live. Now we're talking about this inside of ourselves, right? Inside of ourselves. When a person realizes that the majority, we'll see. Vir Zaktan Pasuk, like it says, the Jewish people realize that the whole entire world is like a big desert, and that the Jews have a very small place there. Eden Zaina Minderheit is the minority from Einer Felker, from all the people, Allah Felker, from all the people in the world. Azoy Oich by Yidden Gufa, also by Jews, Zaina the Yidden, there are Jews that keep Torah and the commandments, they're also, with the way it should be, at least presently, temporarily, they also a smaller portion of the Jewish people. How many Jews put on tefillin every day? How many Jews keep Shabbat every day? How many Jews? Right? The minority of the Jewish people, 10%, 20%. May it be 100%, but right now it's not. Der erster Wort. So where is the desert? Suddenly you realize the desert is a place where no man lives. What does it mean, a man? A man is a person a Jew that does the Torah and the commandments. How many from all the people, 9 billion people in the world, how many people are really like this, that do all the Torah and the commandments? A small number. A small number. The erster Wort mit welcher der Pasuk saith is midbar agadol. That's the first step in being in exile. When you think of yourself in relation to the world, that the world is a big desert. The erste trap from the you read of the first step in descent, when a Jew stops acting, thinking, feeling like a Jew, from welche is fangt an, when it begins, the whole exile is the fact that Jews feel that the world is bigger than them. Men hold them Yeshuv. We hold that the place where Jews and Judaism is a kleine ort, it's a very small part of life. Und the Arum Gevelt and the surrounding world, the Midbar Amim, what's called the Midbar Amim, it's called the international desert, far a größer ort. The world is very big, it's very real. A größer Zach from Yidden is much greater than the Jews. The world is big. Be'emes can kein Zach in dem Welt nit halten, kein Shlita, but Yidden. The fact is nothing can control the Jewish people. Adarab, exactly the opposite. Allah sein and bottle to Yidden, the whole world should be surrendered to the Jews. Why? The Jews have the message of the Creator. The Creator is creating them. Vir zogt in Heintikus Parsha, like it says in this week's Torah portion, Vayu malachim u'manayech v'saroteim menikotayech. Like it says in the future redemption, all the kings will come and they'll be your servants. They'll clean the streets for you. They'll do whatever you want. And the Gemara zogt, like the Gemara said in the pasuk, Varu kal me'oretz, the world will see and they'll be afraid of you. Look in the United Nations today, right? The Jews are always apologizing. They're always sorry. And the United Nations is always condemning them. You're evil, you're bad. And the Jews say, well, no, we're not. We didn't mean it. It's not so. We didn't do anything. Please don't be mad at us. I remember there was one time when Bibi Netanyahu went to the United Nations. He gave this speech that the hairs stood up. We are the Jewish people. The land of Israel was given to us by God. It is in the Torah. No one can take it. Oh, they stood up. even the enemies, they stood up and they gave a standing ovation. He came back to Israel, he gave away half of Hebron to the Arabs for absolutely no reason. But all of a sudden he got scared. He stood up and he started, Elu tefillin shabarosh. It says that the whole world will see you and they'll be afraid of you. This is the tefillin. When a Jew puts on his head and in his head, oifen cup, and by im faran, there's Shema Yisrael, and inside of his head is the Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, which is in the tefillin. Und sein Seichel is a room genumen mit dem Wesen, and when his mind is knows clearly as their Eibishter is the Einziger Balabais, he's the only boss on the world, then the whole world will be afraid of you. Oh, but when a person starts thinking that the world is so big, that he gives an importance to the world, and he says that the world is very big and I'm very small. So as a result, he's got the question, Mia kum Yaakov, who can help me? I'm very small. The Shaila Bu for the question itself is given chashivas that you start giving to the world as overdue importance, undue importance, as das macht by him of Gullus. This already, as soon as you start thinking the world is bigger than Judaism, this already starts exile. Ahelam ve'ester, you started off with a wrong assumption. As the Welt, that the world can have an abalabatikkeit eber Yidden, that the world can control what I do. Das is atchalas Gullus. This is the beginning of exile. Aber wenn gedenkt, when a person remembers, as the God, you chose us from all the people and you elevated us. Vert far kainen nitnespal, won't be affected by anybody. Now you have to understand, this is talking about you won't be affected by anybody as far as Torah mitzvahs are concerned. Vesendik, when you know that Jews are higher from everyone, they're connected to the Creator. Undemol then is nitakan gullus. Then there's no exile by him. They're abishter gitim parnasa. God gives you a livelihood. Right, you have to have a business, but you can't go crazy. Can anführen sein Geschäft the Darkei Torah. Then you can conduct your business according to the Torah. Und es bleibt bei ihm Zeit auf Kaviyos in the Torah, and he still has time for learning Torah. But as soon as you start thinking the world is bigger than me, then you become ashamed. Right? People, they change their name, they take off their beard, they take off their tzitzis, they take off their yarmulke. They're all of a sudden they're ashamed to this. From this, was nemt an the Welt, that he thinks that the world is a big desert. Is can einkommen to a veter. There's a further descent. Not nor midbar gadol, but also Nora. But it's also frightening. Awesome. Gadol meant the world is bigger means that the world is just bigger than him. But nevertheless, I'm something to myself. Oh, I'm small. I can lock myself away on a shoal or something, and I can do Judaism. The kol hapachos is there oich, but at least I'm still, Judaism is still a real thing. I just won't deal with the world. But Nora, when we say that the world is frightening, it means that he has fear for Yenim, for the other. The world is frightening. Even when you're in your house, you're afraid of the world. Val rechend as Yener hatashlita in a machen Abraham. You think that the world rules over me. No matter where I am, the world is ruling me. The world controls Judaism. Is machsheb. When a person thinks that the world is important, gives too much importance to the world, as blois al midbar, that he thinks it's a big desert, then it comes that he can still deal with himself because the world is just bigger. But at least he is something within my four amas, right, in my synagogue or in my place. I'm okay, but I can keep Judaism. But b'shas, when a person thinks, when a person thinks that the world is a big desert, but it's also frightening, is afilu v'megefin sich in all amos. Then even when he is praying in his synagogue, or when he is even in his own house, or he's sitting in a place of learning, as is found in shul, the yeshiva, whatever, nevertheless he has fear for the world. Reb Mora, Mekayim and Torah mitzvahs, he doesn't want to do the Torah and mitzvahs, and he's afraid of the world. What's the world? What are people going to think? What's going to be? Ma yomer agoyim, what are the non-Jews going to say? From this, when he thinks that the world is not only big, but it's also, how do you say, imposing on him, there comes a further level of descent, and that's nachash, a snake. In the book, it's called Sefer Archia Kanuyim. It's in the Archia Kanuyim, but the one who wrote the Seder Hadoros. It's like a sort of a dictionary, a Kabbalistic dictionary. As Brink there, Nachash, he says, what's a Nachash? A snake, that the snake, his poison is hot. Their gift from Nachash, that the poison from of a snake is hot. This means that he begins to get over interested in the world. The world provides for him his excitement. Und durch dabei means this was that he has an interest in the world, as farmintem by in the kach in kedusha. Therefore, this minimizes. The more he is interested in the world, the less he's interested in Torah and commandments and God and Judaism and holiness. Therefore, can come in to nacha. There's even a deeper descent, which is saraf, serpent. A serpent, which I don't know exactly how you translate that now today, but it's in the Torah. There was such a thing. Der Koch and Welt, then he is not just it's strong, right? He enjoys video games. Who knows what much things that are much worse than that. On as get as nit nor was it is mamat, the feeling of holiness, but even more it burns up. As in Gansen, it far brent. Anything that's holy, it burns up totally. He's willing to do the commandments. He does it a little bit. He puts on the maybe his tefillin are not kosher, and he prays in the morning once in a while, 10 minutes or something like that. From them, kach kum to nacha. There's even greater akrav. What's an akrav? An akrav is a scorpion. Vegan akrav. It says by akrav. It says over there that it's poison of a scorpion is cold. It means what? And that this is much worse than a snake or a serpent. Why? Because a person that gets excited about the world, so what? He's in physical things. At least the person is alive. At least the person is getting enjoyment from the world. He's getting enjoyment. He's at least a living person. He can turn back to Judaism. And mainly, so automatically, it could be that if a person can change his direction, he can put that life into holiness. But when a person is cold, this is a sign that he's the opposite of life. Does fear erga. This is much worse. Al derech your own davi sure nagach, like the what's worse than of an aze lagabi sure nagach. Says that a lot of times it says a donkey. It says that an aze like a goat is worse than a goring ox. A goring ox, at least he has a lot of energy, right? And a goat, he just sits there, he's calm. From this can come to an even worse, Simon Asherin Mayim. What does it mean? A person, depression. That's what a person is saying. What does it mean? What's the nachash? The nachash and the sorrow. This means that a person, let's say, gets addicted to the world. The world takes him over. He's hot about the world, but at least he's hot about something, right? The world, though, can do something worse. It can sting Judaism like a scorpion. Depression, cold. Nothing in the world interests him. Afilu ven milamaila is men mo'or. Then there's the worst of all is thirst. There's no water. Even when God sends him some sort of an arousal from above, some sort of a miracle, amazing something happens to him, a great thing, and he thinks, well, maybe God really does exist. Maybe I'm making a mistake. He's thirsty. He wants godliness. He wants his durach dem bat kol. All of a sudden there's a sound, something, or he learns Hasidus, somebody puts the tefillin on, whatever it is, as all of a sudden he gets thirsty for God. As oich dem old in Mayim is Torah. Erveis nid to where the tzimon is. He knows where the thirst is coming from. This is a terrible problem in Israel. It's filled with missionaries. So the missionaries go around, and because there's nobody around that really teaches genuine, not that nobody, but it's very rare. And a lot of these people, they don't have any connection with genuine Judaism. So, but they want God. So these people say, you want God? Here, come and worship this man, worship this statue, worship a dog, a cat. Right? Worship idolatry. Idolatry. A thirst like the golden calf. The Jewish people without Moses, they don't know what to do. They got all confused. We want God. Here is God. Here's the God that took you out. Worship the golden calf. There is Darshik. Er is Darshikt und viel nicht was geht zu sorry und viel nicht und weiß nicht zu was. He's thirsty. He has a desire, but he doesn't know what for. Weil is geworden so weit, because he's so far away from godliness that he has no connection to the whole thing of holiness. That was the ideal of the land of the Zionists, that the Jews, you give the land of Israel, you don't need God. So there it comes as a result. Even when a person gets thirsty for God, he doesn't know what he's thirsty for. He doesn't. How does this whole terrible thing? That's exile. That's gullus. That the Jewish people are so confused, and either they have no desire for godliness whatsoever, right? Or the desire is wrapped up in the world because it's wrapped up in the world, or they're just confused. They're just totally confused, right? That there's like called the Tino Kanishpa. From how does this all begin? It all began that you thought that the desert was big. Just the fact that you gave undue importance to the world. You thought that the world is more powerful than you. Men macht vetik, you macht small. You don't realize that Judaism is connected to God, the creator of the universe. The midbar, you make the desert small. The Welt, das is the erster Trupp. So you read it, this is the first step of this descent to the lowest level of thirst. Even when you do have thirst for God, your Jewish soul wakes up, ain't mine, you don't know where to go for water. You don't know. Darfan is verstandig, so it's understood that how do you have to fix all this up? We have to, number one, the first step is mitaken sein, the erste Siba, you have to fix up the first reason. Haben, the Starkheit in Yiddishkeit, you have to have a strength in Judaism. Gedenken, you have to understand, as Ata Bachartanu Mikol Amin, that God, you chose us from all of the other nations. V'Romantanu. Last week we had Kol Agoyim Kamar Midli. Remember in the Haftorah we had last. We say it in the morning. All of the non-Jews are like a drop in the bucket. Just think, God took us out of Egypt. That's the basis of Judaism, right? The basis of Judaism is God took us out of Egypt. That's the birth of the Jewish people. God himself, that a lot of Jews don't even believe in. Not only does he exist, he favors the Jews. Not only does he favor the Jews, he actually did a miracle personally and took the Jews out of Egypt. Egypt was the most powerful country in the world. All the countries in the United Nations, all together, they're absolutely nothing compared to the Creator. If the Creator wants 1 second, he can do whatever he wants to. And we Jewish people are chosen by God. And he elevated us from all of the other nations. Un demold wird men putter from the Gullus. Then we'll be exempt from the exile. Omen gate in Eretz Tov Rachava, we go into a wide land together with Moshiach Tzidkenu. So now, of course, what are you going to do? You're going to say, well, all the Jewish people, they're not going to do this. Come on. The answer is no. The Rebbe is not talking. He's talking to all the Jewish people, of course, but he's talking to us, each and every one of us. And of course, let's get even more. The Rebbe here is talking about religious Jews. He's talking to Hasidic Chabad. In other words, we have to change our whole attitude, or more exactly, I have to change my attitude. We have to take the attitude of the Rebbe. When the Rebbe said, for instance, that they should put Hanukkah menorahs out in the street, and that they should make big Hanukkah celebrations, the reform, I think even the conservative Jews, they went berserk. They sued us. They said it's going to make another Holocaust, and you got to watch out what the world says, and it's very this, and they were shaking, right? Shaking. What were they shaking about? In the end, it became a very nice thing, and now everybody does it. Right now, everybody's trying to copy it. Wonderful. And the non-Jews praised us, and it was wonderful. I was invited once to Poland, Warsaw, and the head of the city, right? The Polish were like the biggest anti-Semites in the world. All the people, there was a crowd there of like, I don't know, 5,000 people. They all came and they watched. It was cold, bitter cold. It was Hanukkah. Everybody enjoyed it and they were dancing to the Jewish music. When you think that the world is big, then it becomes big. If you think that it's not big, that God is big, then God is big. Because you have to know what to do. You have to learn Torah. Therefore, now we can understand what the Gemara says. If a nachash is around your leg, then you should stop. If it's a non-fatal, what is it called? A not deadly snake, there's a word for it, a not deadly snake, then if it's coming to you, you should not stop praying. But if it's a scorpion, then you should stop. That's what the Gemara says. Wenn halten mitten davening, if you're in the middle of praying. And all of a sudden, what does it mean? You feel all of a sudden the desires of the world creep in. That means what? That there's a snake. We said that it's poison, it's hot. Then what should you do? Even though it interferes with your praying, nevertheless, don't stop. You have to increase your prayer even more. Think more deeply about what God is. Remove your mind from the heat of the world. Because in the end, because there is, at least you're interested in something in the world, so you'll come back to daven. But if you'll come back to praying properly. But if there's a scorpion on your leg, then you have to stop praying. As soon as you become depressed and you become negative from the world, then you have to reassess the whole entire thing. Hagam das is nor even though it's just on your heel, it's just approaching your foot. Nevertheless, the poison, it's cold. This is a metaphor for a person that the world cools him off. It cools off his brain and his heart. Marnit V in more, it says, even though it's just his heel that's it's entering. Nevertheless, the foot, nevertheless, you should stop praying. Because if in the middle of davening, all of a sudden you feel you're cold to Judaism, you have no interest in it whatsoever, then you have to make a reassessment of the whole business. This is a sign as the whole way that you serve God is not right. You have to go to a Farbringen, you have to take advice for somebody. Therefore, he stops the whole order of serving God, and he has to do a new service of God. Avoda with chayus, with lebedekite, because Judaism has to be in a way of interest in the Torah, interest in the commandments, interested in the creator of the universe. When you have that, then it says, this comes by means of learning the ideas of Hasidut and thinking deeply into them about how God is with us, creating the whole entire world, that's the whole thing of the tree of life. So what's the Rebbe saying? Our exile comes because of our thoughts. And our thoughts affect our heart. And the main thoughts that we have, the misconceptions that we have is, how do we relate to the world? How do we relate to the world? How does the world relate to Judaism? How does it fit into the whole picture? The whole idea of the future redemption is that everyone will see that God and the Torah and the commandments are the rulers of the world. This is where the world comes from. Then the world's going to be an orderly place, a blessed place, a meaningful place. That's what's supposed to be. But it all comes from the Jews. The Jews have to activate it. If the Jews really realize the importance of the Torah, they realize the importance of God, they realize that God is creating everything, how great God is, how exciting it is to serve the creator of the universe, how real God is, how much God loves us, then everything becomes exciting. Then you have to start to work. Then the work really begins. But at least you know who the boss is. As soon as you think that the world is the boss, then what has Torah of Mitzvahs got to do with the world? Torah of Mitzvahs is going to teach me how to have a good time. It's going to teach me how to be successful in the world. The Torah of Mitzvahs is going to teach me how to get pleasure. Right? That's what the world is about. Success, pleasure, fame. The Torah doesn't teach you these things. The Torah teaches you about how to be honest, how to be truthful, how to be. As soon as the world creeps in, then you could be the biggest rabbi in the world, know everything, but all of a sudden interests you the world, having your name in the newspaper, being famous, being powerful, all sorts of strange ideas that the non-Jews should like us. So therefore, the Rebbe is saying the way to do it, we have to reassess our whole attitude and our whole enthusiasm to God, the Torah, and the commandments, and that will be the first step to going out of exile. And as we say, very important lesson, a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. Before we know it, in one instant, the land of Israel will be a holy place. There won't be any missionaries or LGBT, whatever parades or all this weird stuff going on, giving land away to the Arabs, to our enemies. And the land of Israel will be a lesson to the whole world that God loves everybody. But there's rules to the game. There's rules. We should at least return God's love a little bit by doing what God wants. And that's going to be the future redemption. The whole world will know God. Everyone will know. Even the evil people will turn to God. We say it 3 times a day in the Aleinu prayer, but it all depends on our thoughts and attitude. So let's begin right now. Now let's do the Yom Yom. What's going on? Huh? There we go. Oh. Okay. Working with the congregation, activism, right? Working with other people. This means that, what does it mean? That even when you're in the marketplace and you're thinking and you're in business, or you still think about what can you do for the benefit of the Hasidim. When he encounters a business acquaintance among market people, he should think that he should go to Hasidut, or he should go to a Farbringen. Activism is an obligation. In other words, it means going out. Going out. This is an obligation, a personal obligation, whether you're great, you're small, or whatever. And I told this story 50 times, but I'll tell you it again. I had a very good friend, passed away, a very simple person, and very, very simple person. And he heard that the Rebbe wanted Mivtzoim. This is like back in the 50s. And he couldn't really speak very well. And so he took 3 pamphlets written by the previous Rebbe in Hasidut, and he put them together, and he bound them together, and he put a sort of a cover over them. And he wrote Chabad Hasidus, and he put it in the New York Library. And a couple of years later, he met someone that said that he became a religious Jew because he happened to be in the New York Library, and he saw this little thing sticking out, and he said Hasidut Chabad, and it didn't have any pocket in it. It wasn't a library book to take it out. So he just sat down and he read it, and he didn't understand really anything, but he understood that Judaism is something very, very deep and interesting. And he became a Baal Tshuva. He became religious. So in other words, this person, this simple person, he saw the fruit of his work, right? And he did a very simple thing, and it could be that he had more of a result than a big person who has a big Chabad house, right? That everybody gets excited. And who knows how long it lasts? You can't know. And he did a very simple thing, and it lasted a whole lifetime and made a whole person, him and his whole family all became observant Jews. So you have to do for others. And even if you do a little bit, the results can be very big. Have a good Shabbat, let's do Shabbat tomorrow. Let's do tomorrow. 1 second. We do tomorrow. Here. Is this it? No, Monday. I clicked it twice. There we go. 1 minute. What's this? This is all. I don't get it. This is all confused. I see. This is for a different year or something. Okay, this is today's, and this is tomorrow's. This is right. Okay. It says Menachem of here, 22. My father said, one should not recite the morning blessings before rinsing out your mouth in the morning, except on fast days. First thing, you have to rinse out your mouth. Very important to be acceptable. Have a good day with Mashiach now. Have a good Shabbos. Shabbos, Herschel. Thank you very much for coming. Shalom uvracha.